Hi, this is Pam, Flower Patch Farmhouse, and I'm back with another painting tutorial. And this one is going to be on these large poppies. You see, this is on a sign board. You see how large that is. And I have a bud up here. And then I have an even larger flower down here. You see, it's a very large sign. And I had posted pictures of this on Facebook and Instagram and had a lot of interest in a painting tutorial. And I'm going to show you how I paint large flowers with, oh, I got that all dirty. How I paint large flowers on that sign. I'm going to start by painting this poppy. This was the first one in the middle of the signboard that I painted, and you need to do this. This is red. This is apple red, folk art. Oh no, that's Injun, sorry. Folk art apple red, multi-surface. And then I usually use two colors that are kind of close to each other to give a little bit of variation without it being very stark difference. But here, this one is Injun red, and I also put that on my palette paper. You can see the subtle difference in coloration. That is also a multi-surface paint. Now you want a lot of paint because these are going to be large flowers on the board. It was large. This one is the same size as the one on the board, and you want to use a brush that is on the larger side. Now the largest one that I have here right now is a plaid one stroke Donna Dewberry flat brush. Now on my larger flowers I have used these large 2-inch brushes. These are just a craft brush that I get online or in craft stores. And right now I'm getting the soap out of my brush. I'll just second. So I'm going to double load my 1-inch brush, and I'm going to load it really good and full of paint. So I have this good and full of paint. Good amount of paint. Now I'm going to see how well it goes along on this, or spreads on this watercolor paper. Now let's get this down in the center, and I'm just going to come along and just spread that out on there and just pull it down. Pull it down. Now I'm not going to worry about that up there. I could go over it if I like, but I'm not worried about the petals being perfectly even along here. I want them to come all the way down. Sometimes I push, spread, and I bring up like this, and sometimes I don't. I just bring it down because I know this center part's going to cover it. Now this didn't come all the way down, so I'm going to go over it. And I'm just keep on going along, and I'm keeping the apple red on this side and the Injun red on that side, so it's going to have the striations of color or the different colors going down along the same side. Now over here I may switch it just because I like switching things up, and it makes this a little bit darker here along the edge where that petal would overlap. And now on the board I didn't have the lines here. I did it with chalk, so it just washes right off with the paint, or comes right off. So like right here you could see the lines underneath, and that wouldn't be so with the chalk. But you see the different colorations you're getting in there, and that's great. Now I'm going to let that kind of dry up there, and I'm going to come along and do the bottom petals, and they're going to kind of go like this. And I'm kind of following the outline now. And there's a difference of colors there. The lighter and the darker red. And then I'm going to kind of go over that this way and then around this way. Now it doesn't matter that I've gone way past the line. Now I'm going to let that dry pretty much. I may come in while it's still wet. Let me look and see, try something. Sometimes I'll let it dry completely because the paint will get to a point that it will lift if it's to a point of dry. Okay, I put some pure orange, multi-surface pure orange on my brush, and I got a little bit, see, on the tip. I didn't blend it in or anything, and I'm kind of going to go along the tops here and just add a little bit of highlight. That's kind of in the center there. So you can't really see where the different petals are, but I'm going to come in after it's dried and I'll show you how I'm going to put in the shadows so you get to see the different petal shapes that are overlapping. So we'll let this dry. I might pull a little bit up from there around that centerpiece, and then we'll come back in and shadow around the petals. When I pounced on this center, which I'm going to show you in a moment, I had used a mix of colors. I had added black to an eggplant and then like a midnight blue, but you really don't need to do that. You could do it just with a black, and then when it dried you could go over it with a little bit of the eggplant or the violet pansy to give it that purple hue that you want. That's just much easier than doing the mixing and whatever. And now I'm going to show you how I pounce it in. We're going to do the center. Now we're going to do it with a scruffy, just to kind of pounce it in there. You could paint it in there with a flat brush if you would like. I just like the texture that a scruffy brush gives. And that color that I'm using is the one I showed you how I mixed. And it's the eggplant color mixed with a touch of black and a touch of midnight in the folk art paint. Now this down here is a little touchy. That might have been easier to do with a flat brush, but I'm just going to do this. I can go back over those red or just not, just keep it like that. So I kind of got that in an arc there, and I'm going to come back and I will see, now see how this is feathery up here? I like that. And I'm just going to add some streaks coming up like it does. You don't have to do this, but it is what I did on my other one. So that is just with a liner brush, and it was just wet. I didn't have any real paint on it. I just used the wet paint from the center there. That needs to dry, and then we'll put in the green center, which you wouldn't have to. You could just leave it this dark color and be fine, but I like the added detail of the middle cap in the poppies. Now we're going to put the center in our poppy. We're going to do the light green, and I'm going to pounce it in. You could brush it in. I was thinking I'd pounce it in. It's kind of a half circle. I'm trying to make sure I'm even. I'm kind of at an odd angle here, so touch it lightly on the corner. This is the small scruffy brush that comes in the multi-pack that I use frequently, and just kind of eyeballing how I want that to look. A little bit more. I kind of want this all to be the same size as width of band around there. So there's the light green, and I will need to let that dry, and then I can put the little lines on it that make it look like the poppies do. And that is that for now. Let's see if I can show you how I did the bud while that dries. So I kind of went in with, I don't know why I have that catchphrase. I went in with the number 10 brush. I double loaded in my two reds. It's the apple red and the engine red. Double loaded just like I did on the larger brush. My paints are getting a little thick on here. I either need to spritz them or... Anyways, you've heard me say that before. Okay, so I have two colors on here. I'm starting on the chisel edge, and I'm just going to flatten and drag. The light on that side, the dark on this side, and then I'm going to do the same here. Doesn't matter that it kind of went over that. The green will cover it. But I just want to make it opaque. So, and if I want to get it a little darker in there or thicker, I can go over it again. And if I want a line, like kind of a divisive line, I went into the burgundy wine and add that in there. It just kind of blends in while it's wet. And then I double load in the thicket green with the same brush, the number 10 brush, and the citrus. I guess if you want to see that, I can show you. It's kind of hard to move this camera, but here I'm doing the same. I'm double loading the citrus and the thicket, just the same, going back and forth like I double load everything. Some people like to see it again and again. But okay, I'm starting on the chisel edge. I'm going to flatten, pivot the brush, and then come up. Now a lot of the light green didn't show, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. You can come back over it later if you like. And you see each time it does it differently, and that's what makes it unique. So there is the bud, that's partially open. Enough anyways. So now I'm going to do the center thing. Now I'm doing the same thing as I did with the light green for that, except I'm dragging it through the thicket. This is the liner brush again. Now I'm going to make a little, that's a little too much paint, I gotta drag it off. Like circle, not a perfect circle, but you get the idea. And I'm just going to kind of go like that. Make it and there's the center. And if it showed, like it's showing enough of it, you can kind of draw the bottom of that center. Now you can draw more lines depending on what you want to do. And then you could also draw with that light or that dark green. You do it with the purple, but I'm out of the purple. So you can start doing little spikes out here. With the green. You don't have to do this. I like doing little details. And I will show you how I do the little dots. Let me find my little daughter. Okay, we're going to give it some little detail. I've tapped my little stylus into the light green paint, and we're going to just add some dots. Just get dotty here. Now there's different sizes in this package of styluses. There's bigger ones, real dinky ones, so you can pick. Now if I had some purple here, I would do that too. Let's see. It's a little dry. Yeah, that's not going to work. So actually I could go into black if I wanted to, or the midnight, and see how that worked. But it just gives it a little bit of detail. Whoops, sorry. Let's see, what am I looking for? The black's not over there. Okay. And you can even do it if you want even a lighter color, some white, just to give it a touch of spark. But let me look. Okay, here's some licorice. And I'm just going to dip it in the lid so you can see I have the real tiny side. Kind of dot it over here to make sure I got this way too thick. But you get the idea. And you dot it. Just don't overdo it. You can get a little too carried away. Try to be judicious in your dotting. I'm getting a little bit of white so you can see how just a touch of white can add a spark in there. I'm dotting it out here so I can probably needed it a little inkier, added a little water, but so there you have that. Now I could come back and I'm cleaning up the edges of these petals. So let me clean off my dauber really quick, my stylus. This paint's really dry. I should get some more out, but we'll try to see if we can just do it with this. So now I'm going to come back. This comes to here, and I'm going along that edge. I did the dark along that edge. So I'm stroking along, and then I come to the chisel here, so it kind of comes and wraps around. Now you can see the line through there. Now that wouldn't show on my board because I would have that. I want that to be dark right there. I would have done it with chalk, and that just wipes off. But I wanted you to be able to see the lines when I first did it, and this was white, so. Okay, and there is that poppy. Now on my board I kind of tried to come along, put fur. If you've ever seen poppies, they got these little hairy things on their stems, but it just didn't look right, so I wouldn't advise doing that. Even if you saw it on the sign, just leave it be. Just do a regular stem and be happy with it. Now I'm going to show you how to put some shadows in so you have the division more visible in between the petals. Now let me slide this over here and see if the camera is going to focus for you. And here is some berry wine. Now this puddle right here is blending, or not blending, this is floating medium. And then I'm just going along and just putting a little bit on the corner. I hope that's clear as mud. Want to make the petals stand out as separate petals. So right here, like this little petal is a separate petal. So I'm pulling along some shadow so it causes a division there. Now I'm reloading my brush. I'm very careful because you can start to get paint all the way across your brush and you just want it on the tippy corner. And so here's another petal division that I want to show up. So I add that right there. And this is the wide petal, the center back, and I want to divide that from this petal. So I'm going along here to add the shadowing there. And then I also had gone along the edge, and I just wanted to remind you too that with acrylics, when it dries, it darkens usually. Now I wanted to go along here, the top back, and give that some depth of color just along the edge. And I'm getting a dry brush. I'll flip it because there's a little bit there. And that gives it a little added dimension back there on the petal. And then I'm going to, these, you can see the shadowing's already there, but I'll just show you how I did that. Now these petals come up over these petals. So you're going to go along the outside edge, and then I kind of pull it up because they kind of wrap up and around that. And the same with here. I kind of pull it around the shadowing and pull it up. And you can see I did the same along here, and then I did along here. And that just kind of gave the flower a little bit more dimension, as I said. I'll do it again, it won't hurt it. Give it a little darker outlining, and that kind of makes the flower pop. Now if I wanted this to come up, I could do that there too. And there, then you could stand back, look, and then see if you wanted to add some color in different areas. Like this, I don't like the way that's swishing across that way. I want this petal to look like it's coming down. So I'm going to go for the apple red, and I'm going to put some more on my palette paper. Now that my brush has been rinsed out, this is the 1-inch flat brush that I had been using all along. I'm looking for a rag here to, I got it too wet, I don't want it too wet. Okay, now I'm dipping in apple red. Now apple red is not completely opaque, so it might not have the coverage I want, but it will kind of disguise that. See, I want that to peep straight down, and that red really brightens it up. Now this is too orange compared, so I'm adding some more red to that petal, and even this petal. Now, being that this color is not opaque, completely opaque, the undercolors will show through, and you'll keep the majority of those highlights you had from the orange and etc., and it'll all go well together. Now on my board that I painted, I had come along here and shadowed, so it gave it some dimensions, and I did that with a burnt umber, but I don't have the burnt umber here right now, so I'm going to go ahead and just do that, show you how I did that with the burgundy wine. I'm just dipping my corner in the burgundy wine. I have a kind of a wet brush, so it's kind of a damp brush. Let me see if I got this right. And I'm usually, well, that's a little bit too much paint, but I would usually fade it out more on my palette. And then I just kind of come along and I let it go up, the chisel edge come up, because you don't want just a big wide streak. So there, I let that come up there, and then I do the same on this side. And you see that, and I let it fade into the flower, and that gives it some added dimension. I only shadowed the underneath, and I didn't shadow all of it. And like I said, I had the burnt umber a little more faded or diluted, and so it just gave a hint of color along the underneath to give it that shadowing, which also gave it dimension. I also did that to, well, I'm looking at it now, I didn't do it to the leaves, but I would do it to everything, so everything had a little bit of a shadow underneath of it. And I think that's it for this poppy tutorial.